What's up YouTube, I'm Mike, and today I'm bringing you the first video, actually, the first follow-up video in Ball and Bob. What was going to be Bob's fall bulking cycle, but basically everything has just gone wrong. And so I haven't made a video in about 14 days, so I want to follow up with you guys on where Bob's progress is at. I'm not going to go back into all the details of everything that I already shot in the first video. If you haven't seen that one, please click this link here, and that will explain the starting point. If you watched that video, then you know that Bob was having some trouble with vomiting and that he was thinking it was connected to the T-ball that he had added to his cycle. So he was starting at 200 milligrams of Tren E, 500 milligrams of Test E, and 20 milligrams of T-ball per day, and then was struck down with vomiting in the morning. I have made a previous video about this where I suspected that high estrogen was the cause. And so then the T-ball gets put into the mix and everything fell apart again. So it's really been a very, very rough 14 days for Bob. He has spent the overwhelming majority of that time puking his brains out in the morning. So basically where we left off at the end of the previous video, we were 1 week into Bob's cycle. And so he pulled the T-ball out thinking that that was to blame for the vomiting. And within 2 days of stopping the T-ball dose, vomiting subsided again. So being that that was 2 times during this quick little cycle that Bob had started T-ball, began vomiting, stopped the T-ball, vomiting subsided, he felt like it was conclusive that the T-ball was causing the problem. So he pulled the T-ball back out of his regimen and had 3 or 4 good days. And then bang, out of nowhere, the vomiting returned. So Bob is really scratching his head at this point, like what the fuck is going on in his body? He'd already looked at all of his blood work. The only thing that was still hanging out there that was a cause for concern was the estrogen. And so he's feeling like he's got that under control, but apparently not. Like, you know, I guess he felt like he was going to be getting it under control. So he had added a new whey protein powder that he'd been drinking quite a bit. It's called Isopure Infusions. Really great protein powder if you've never tried that. It's a welcome change from the milkshake type protein. If you've ever had the old bottles of Isopure, like the glass bottles where like it just looks like colored water, it's that consistency. This is what the Isopure Infusions powder creates, and it is delicious. But Bob was drinking it excessively, and he thought, you know, could that be causing it? Because the vomiting was coming with a lot of gastrointestinal distress, like a lot of burping and burning in his stomach. And so he pulled the whey protein powder out of the diet, tried to start eating more solid foods, vomiting continues. 3 days in, he's like, what the fuck is going on? He'd been running telmisartan trying to control his blood pressure, pulls the telmisartan out. 2 days later, still vomiting. At this point, he's beginning to think maybe he's got a peptic ulcer. Could be caused by the estrogen, could be unrelated. Bob's had gastrointestinal problems his entire life, but nothing to this degree or this acute. So he went to the store and got Nexium, started taking Nexium at 40 milligrams a day. 3 days into that, vomiting is continuing. So at this point, Bob starts looking through his little dope book. He logs all of his cycle notes and everything, and he's realizing that he really needs to be at least 3 milligrams of Arimidex a week to try to knock this estrogen down. And he feels like he's probably missing a dose because he takes Arimidex with each of his injections, and there's that third dose that's kind of hard to dial in when you're taking 2 injections a week and you got to try to fit it in. He didn't really want to take 1.5 milligrams and 1.5 milligrams. He wanted to take 3 milligrams spaced over time. And so he began to feel confident that what was really going on in this bizarro set of circumstances was just that his E2 was high and that was causing the gastrointestinal distress. He did a bunch of research on estrogen and found out that sure enough, estrogen can, at high numbers, cause all of the symptoms that he was experiencing. So he started adding in back in some Arimidex. And what he really did was he took Arimidex 1 milligram and the milligram the next day to try to jumpstart the cessation or the ridding of the estrogen from his system. But when you're running Arimidex, that's part of the problem. It's not like letrozole, which is a suicide inhibitor, which will bring your levels down rapidly. When you're taking Arimidex, you're taking an aromatase inhibitor, and so you're only preventing your body from making more effectively, or reducing the amount that your body makes. What's already in there is going to be in there for a little while, causing problems. But as he started ramping up his Arimidex dose, his stomach indigestion problems got progressively better. And so Bob has now logged, I think, 3 days of no vomiting since he started raising his Arimidex dose. In that same period of time, he's seeing his libido come back in a positive way, erection quality come back in a positive way. There's a lot of things pointing to estrogen might be the causal factor here. So again, as I said, I made videos about this before, Bob's body just apparently is really super bitchy. It is super sensitive to estrogen for whatever reason. And so hopefully for Bob, this is going to be the solution. This is going to be the end of his vomiting nightmares, and he could start back on this cycle. During the course of the last 14 days, Bob's cycle has gone in the toilet, because when you start vomiting first thing in the morning, and then it's not until 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon before you're able to get your stomach settled and get some good calories in, your bulk is fucked. Like, you've got to be able to eat all day long when you're cramming calories, especially for Bob, who has a hard time getting his meals down already. Bob was targeting 3,875 calories a day, give or take, for his bulking calories, and he, during this vomiting spell, is probably lucky to be getting in 22. And so over the course of the last 14 days, as I've said, he lost 4 pounds. It doesn't look to my eye like it's all body fat either, so Bob is really struggling at this point. But to the anabolic side, because he was in such a calorie deficit, or felt like he was not getting any calories, he of course raised his Tren dose to 300 milligrams Tren E a week. The test is still at 500 milligrams, and that's where he's probably going to keep it for a minimum of the next 3 to 4 weeks. In the last 3 to 4 days that Bob has been able to get in some healthy workouts, the Trenbolone has shown its true colors again. So despite the fact that Bob is in a calorie deficit, he's been puking his guts out, he's been lethargic and laying around the house a lot, he was able to set 2 pretty substantial PRs in the last couple of days on this current less is more trend cycle, which checks one of the boxes for Bob. The whole point of this cycle, really, on top of gaining some weight, was to find out if he could make gains on smaller amounts of anabolics. If you remember, in his previous cycle, he ran 800 milligrams of Test E, 550 milligrams of Tren E, along with some Anavar and some Masteron. So his doses were climbing toward the 3,000 milligrams per week range at that point, and it was really more than his body could handle. And so what he wanted to find out was, could he continue to make progress on smaller amounts of anabolics? And what we have discovered already, at least in the strength department, that the answer is yes. So hopefully if Bob can get his diet back together, what we may be looking at here is just a cut or a recomp. We'll just have to see. Bob is still struggling putting the calories down, and so I think Bob's going to try to lean up a little bit over the course of the next few weeks, get his system back right, get his estrogen levels back in check, and see how he feels at that point. So if everything stays good over the course of this next week, I will definitely bring you another video in 1 week's time, and we'll look at Bob's body composition, we'll look at his strength gains, we'll reassess how this cycle is going, because this last 2 weeks has really been a fucking wash, and that sucks. And it's really unfortunate when you're putting compounds like Trenbolone into your body, and you're taxing yourself, and you're still not able to get the, you're still not able to go to the gym as much as you want, and you're really wasting it, and it's unfortunate. If Bob was a smarter person, he probably would have pulled the plug on all of this. He's not smart. He's committed to treating his body, as I've said, like a laboratory experiment. And so that's the purpose of these videos. Hopefully all of you guys and gals out there can learn from Bob's experience and maybe make better decisions, or at least just, enjoy what it has to offer. So that's the update as we stand right now. Again, I'll make another video in about a week's time if everything stays good. Hopefully this has been informative, and as always, I'm not in any way advocating the use of anabolics or illegal drugs. Don't break the law in your country. Please look at what Bob is dealing with. These compounds are not good for you, and they cause all kinds of side effects. Even if the trend and the test are not doing something toxic to Bob's body, the fucking estrogen game that you have to play trying to keep all of these things in line when you're constantly changing your doses can be really difficult to dial in, and if your body is sensitive to these things, it can really lead to a lot of misery as Bob is experiencing personally. So there you have it. Hopefully this has been informative, and as always, we'll see you on the next one.